Last night, the Toronto Rock dumped the Minnesota Swarm 16-4, taking control of the National Lacrosse League East Division. Tonight, the Swarm try to regroup and come back. We'll have the action for you right after this. Swarm Rock coming up next. Hello, lacrosse lovers. Happy Valentine's Day. And for those of you who love the game, this is the place to be. Obviously, I am Steven Stamp, joined by Matthew Caruk. We're pleased to be bringing you this National Lacrosse League action between the Minnesota Swarm and the Toronto Rock. And, Matt, how does a team come back a night later after being crushed 16-4 and face the same team and feel like they're in the game?
It just comes down to your preparation, how much you forget about what happened last night. Those of us that were around to the end of the game last night saw Andrew Suter say that was just simply unacceptable. And for these guys, it's really a short memory. I love the second half of a home-on-home because everything is really even playing ground. Yeah. The game finished for both teams at the same time. They both had to take the same flight. It just comes down to how well you prepared your body, how well you prepared your mind, your game preparation, and your game plan coming into tonight.
I think the mind is such a big part of it when you have been beaten that badly. I talked to Joe Sullivan, the head coach of Minnesota, and he was certainly saying, you know, you have to forget it, and we just, obviously we've got to be better. As a young team, you can't get outworked in this league or you don't have a chance.
Well, a lot of the problem last night, Miles Thompson was getting outworked by Sandy Chapman. Our colleagues out in Minnesota pointed that out. I think you and I probably both noticed that as well. So what the Toronto Rock did very well on offense, they moved the ball around, they created openings for each other, and I don't think Minnesota did a lot of that. So tonight, maybe a few more picks involved, maybe move the ball around a little bit more. That'll open up Kalen Crawford, Shane Jackson, and, of course, Miles Thompson.
You've got to give a lot of credit for that to the Toronto defense. I mean, Sandy Chapman and Patrick Merrill were both just running guys all over the floor, absolutely flattening Minnesota forwards. And, you know, the announcer last night did mention at one point, he said, I think that's the first time there that we've seen a Toronto guy get hit. And that was in the third quarter. So Minnesota clearly has to bring a more physical game, really establish that they are in this to win this game and stay in the hunt in the East if they want to be taken seriously as a contender the rest of the way.
Well, you talked about the mental side of the game, and really you could see them, the defense, during that what ended up being a 13-0 run that spanned halftime for the Toronto Rock, 9-0 in the second quarter. The defense just sat there and they looked deflated after every single attempt. A lot of the offense and the chances were gained by the transition, so a lot of those same guys that were on the floor for those goals, and every time they ran up the floor, it was Brandon Miller in the crease for the Toronto Rock, just thwarting that momentum. And what that does, not only does it stop the momentum that Minnesota could get on that chance, but it just ignites more life into the Toronto Rock.
But as they say, last night is last night. It's history. Tonight is a fresh game. Do not be surprised if Minnesota comes out much more competitively. Remember, it was just a couple years ago this Minnesota team crushed Toronto in the playoffs, so they have it in them to be a competitive team. We'll be back with the opening of the game right after this.